Hi, everyone. Welcome to Care Lab.
Welcome to Care Lab. It's Friday. We're so excited to be here together and also excited to have Deborah Grassman with us today. So, Deborah is the author of three books: Peace at Last, The Hero Within, and Soul Injury, a contributing author for four textbooks, 25 published articles. So, she is a writer and has a lot to share with us today. There are four documentary films and a TED Talk that feature her work. But none of these achievements have taught her as much as the 10,000 dying veterans that she took care of as a VA hospice nurse practitioner for 30 years. So if anyone wants to learn how to achieve inner peace, ask a veteran who has successfully struggled to find it for the rest of their lives after they return from war, is a quote. And the lessons she learned culminated into this concept known as soul injury, which we are definitely going to get into. And it's a wound that separates a person from their own sense of self. So Deborah now provides presentations and workshops that can help anyone recover their loss of self-worth by healing the relationship that they have with themselves. So Deborah, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Brandy. I appreciate you having me today.
However, we got to start with something a lot less dignified. So, Amelia, do we have an icebreaker?
Yes, we have an icebreaker question.
Undignified. Okay.
I'll tell you, I almost changed it after we were having a brief discussion about cats and animals coming into the shot of recordings right before we started recording, and I almost changed it based on that. But I'm going to stick to my original question. Actually, before I do, can I just say a little? Deborah, I just want to thank you for your 30 years of service at the VA serving veterans. It is a really, I think a lot of folks don't realize what a unique and challenging job that can often be. Also, of course, what a privilege it is to serve our veterans. So thank you for your service to our service members.
Well, indeed, you're right, Amelia. It was an honor and a privilege. That is forever with me, and the lessons that I learned about how to attain personal peace after being traumatized. They are forever with me, and I hope that I have been a responsible steward of those stories that I have borne witness to with those 10,000 dying veterans, and that the lessons that I learned can be propelled into the world, because certainly we need more inner or outer peace. But honestly, the only way we can get outer peace in the world, right, is to have it first within ourselves. We can't give what we don't have ourselves. So therein lies my personal mission, is that those 10,000 dying veterans did not die in vain, but in fact, the wisdom that they gained in navigating post-trauma will benefit the whole world.
Incredibly well said. And that's the end of the podcast, everybody. No, just kidding.
Mic drop.
No. Mic drop. Yeah. And we're done. No. Okay. So shifting back to our undignified gear here.
Okay.
Quick little icebreaker for everyone. Deborah, you've got to go first. If you could be a character or live in any kind of different literary world, what would it be? Like a favorite book world, or even like a favorite movie world or something like that? Like what other kind of world or universe would you live in?
Oh, yeah, that's easy. That would be Alice in Wonderland.
I love that.
Because Alice in Wonderland, that's the story of how to heal the relationship you have with yourself. That's what that mythological story truly is. And of course, the book that I just wrote, the subtitle, it's Soul Injury, but the subtitle is Healing the Relationship You Have with Yourself. And Alice in Wonderland does a better job than I can in really showing how to do that. And of course, the beauty of mythological stories is they touch the unconscious mind, and it's truly the unconscious mind, not so much the conscious mind. It's the unconscious mind that houses our motivations and initiatives and intuitions that allow us to truly manifest into the world. what we want to be within. So yeah, Alice in Wonderland would be mine.
That's incredible. And can I share a connection with you, Deborah? So my husband is a veteran, and he was in the Navy. And when he was in the Navy and like off on long deployments, his one of his favorite books is also Alice in Wonderland. And something that he would take to doing is he would choose a quote from Alice in Wonderland, and different quotes all the time, and he would put it under the signature of all of his emails as they were going out, sort of as like they applied to different situations that they were going through. So anyway, I thought like, what a wonderful answer, and sort of there's a personal connection there. So
I love that kind of the incongruity of a Navy man on his signature having Alice in Wonderland. What a great incongruity that caught people's attention. He's a smart man.
I mean, I think he's pretty special. I'm a little biased, but
my tagline under my signature is "Don't waste your suffering." And you can see where that comes from. It comes from what I just said in the introduction, which is I don't want those 10,000 veterans to have died in vain, but to be able to carry their wisdom forward. And, I've seen, obviously witnessed a lot of suffering. And I'm not talking about suffering that comes in the dying process. I mean, that's obvious. Everybody knows about that. But what happens as people are on their deathbeds, they go back and kind of recollect their story from their whole lifetime, and that's where you really get to see suffering. But the but is you get to see the suffering from a different perspective, from their own retroactive perspective, which is very different and very reflective. Plus, they're able to look at, say, 6-year-old suffering from an 80-year-old perspective and see the lessons and see how their suffering was redeemed and how it was not redeemed. So, I got both of those perspectives at the end of life, some very dignified and some not so dignified, both, because we're all in our human beingness. We all have both within us, right? Good, bad, ugly, beautiful, it's all there.
I think this is the exact reason why I'm having a hard time answering this icebreaker question, because I
everything
read a
that
lot.
Deborah says is so amazing and like profound, and
well, because everything has both parts, right? Positive and negative. And so if I think about the books that I read and the stories that I love and movies that I love, they also come with their own problems, right? Like we don't often read things or watch movies that don't have an arc to a storyline where there's a problem and there's a hero.
They want to just tell the happy ending. Oh, here's the problem. And we get all in there. Oh, there's the problem. There's the suffering. Oh, and look at how I redeemed it. And, that messy middle part of how to get through it, navigate through it is left out. So, I mean, that's really the stories, in my books that I tell. I said, let's tell the messy. Let's try to untangle that. And let's get entangled with it, because it's not as simple and easy as here was this, and oh, look at what I did to redeem it.
Because most of the work is in the middle part, and most of our lives is in some way in that middle part. So I can't say I want to automatically subject myself to any of those problems in any of those books or movies. So I'm going to opt out by saying I'm going to join just very specifically Revelations in the Bible when it talks about heaven. That's where I'm trying to be. So I'm not going to take none of the rest of the Bible, because there's lots of suffering in there. So
you don't bring Job home with you? I mean, Job.
No, I'm not trying to jump into Job's life. I'm not.
Okay. Job was very profound, though, in his perspective, and his friends that came and told him all about how he shouldn't be thinking negatively, and he's just bringing this on, just needs to rise above it. I mean, that kind of sentiment still does damage to this day.
Totally. So yes, I'm going to pick heaven. Thank you. That's your answer.
Okay. Listen, so you both had actually pretty good, thoughtful, Deborah's exceptionally thoughtful and profound answers. I just want to live in the world of Harry Potter, y'all. I just want to be a witch in the world of Harry Potter. I want a wand and I want to do magic. And I think that would be, I want to fly on a broomstick. It sounds awesome. So if I could, for for a day, like go live in a different world.
That's where it'd be.
Wizarding world of Harry Potter. Yep.
It's a great escape.
Not profound at all, but a lot of fun. Okay,
we need both, Amelia. You don't want to live in my world and Brandy's world all the time of profound dignity and what have you.
And trust me, I don't.
It's both.
Hey there, it's Amelia. Listen, I am so thrilled to have a great resource like Ask Sammy as part of the Care Lab team, and here's why. It's a game changer for aging in place because it makes it so simple. All you do is ask. Just type in your question or even tell Sammy what the problem is and get tailored solutions. Everything from innovative adaptive equipment to comprehensive resources. It's a great way to become more empowered, to live more independently, and to live with greater confidence. And my favorite thing about how Ask Sammy works is it's deeply rooted in dignity and practicality. So whether you're a fellow therapist, a care partner, or someone who's seeking solutions for themselves, visit www.asksammy.com. We're going to link it in the show notes so you can find it there. Start making home more accessible today. Now, back to the show. Okay, so let's jump into this real conversation here, though. I am really interested in how you got to this idea of the soul injury and the term of soul injury. Tell us about your journey in getting there and kind of getting to that place.
Well, it was definitely not as easy as I'm going to make it sound. And it's nothing that was kind of, an aha moment and then developing it. It was actually, as you can appreciate, sitting at dying veterans' bedsides, collecting their stories. And their families would usually be there hearing these stories. Of course, I heard a lot of traumatic stories, especially if they were combat veterans, or really even if they weren't combat veterans and they served in a dangerous duty military assignment. I mean, there is a lot of danger there. There's a lot of trauma there. So I would be hearing those stories. Well, of course, I would also hear the aftermath of how they healed that or didn't heal that. So absolutely both of those, and listen to those stories. I heard a lot about PTSD and that type of thing, obviously. But then when we would engage in those conversations and I would validate and acknowledge what they had experienced with their trauma, with their PTSD, then sometimes intermittently from different veterans, but I heard it from enough over time where they would say, yeah, but what I'm talking about is more than just PTSD. PTSD's caused me problems, but there's something more. And really what it sort of boiled down to, they would say something to the effect of, I lost me. I lost my sense of self. I'm missing in action in my own life. I felt, I've got this hole, those types of things. And sometimes they would describe it, like it's sort of like a soul injury. So I would hear that term intermittently, but periodically enough that it started capturing my attention. So then when I would hear stories, I would I started offering that term back to them. So they would be telling me about how they had lost a sense of self. They got detoured off into numbing agents trying to numb out the pain or whatever. And I would say, well, it sounds like maybe you had a soul injury. And yeah, that's it. So, as I said, I had that experience enough times. And I started talking with our hospice team about it. We started using that term. And I mean, it captured something that was kind of beyond words. Mm-hmm. So when you think about it, so then the next thing that we did, we started saying, well, what causes a soul injury? If we're going to define soul injury as becoming separated from your real self, if that's going to be the definition, what causes it? So I spent several years really just listening carefully to when people would glom onto that soul injury. And then I'd ask them, well, how do you think that happened? How did you lose yourself? It ultimately came down to three things. One is unmourned loss and hurt. Number two, unforgiven guilt and shame. Or fear of helplessness and loss of control. That's how they would lose themselves in one way or the other. So we started really looking at that carefully. Took me years to be able to articulate it. And then, then we, after I retired from the VA, we started taking the concept of soul injury and its three causes to see if it applied to non-military. And it applies to non-military absolutely the same and even more so. I mean, almost everybody, if you talk to them, have acquired a soul injury in one way or the other. Mm. I always tell the story, and sometimes I'm hesitant to tell the story because it seems so trivial compared to what that I have witnessed at veterans' bedsides. But when I was 5 years old, I was watching Lassie, and she's on TV. She's a dog. She's about to be in this dangerous situation, and I'm sure she's going to die. And I'm sitting there crying when my dad walks through the room. He sees my tears, and he starts laughing. Yeah. So I made a 5-year-old decision that day to never cry again. Right. And I didn't for 30 years.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah. When I was 35 and I was dealing with something painful, and I was sitting there and I thought to myself, why am I so afraid of my tears? Why am I? And that's when, and then I also thought, what if my fear of crying is worse than if I just let myself feel my pain? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's when I cried for the first time.
Wow.
And, that's the day I became real. That's the day I shed the fear of emotional pain, that I let go of my shame. See, I was ashamed of my tears. I was ashamed of sad Deborah. And I got a lot of reinforcement for always being calm and even keeled in my family. I got a lot of reinforcement for them. I mean, my sister cried at the drop of a hat, and, she got, but, I always got praise for how even keeled I was. So yeah, that's really the day my unfreezing began. So when I look back, that was a soul injury. There was this hole in me that only, and I always pretended to be, much like my stoic veterans, always to be on the up and even keeled and what have you. And, you may be sad and crying, but I don't do that. There's a lot of ways to acquire a soul injury. And certainly, most people have, if they look back, will see different ways that their fear of emotional pain has caused them to hide from themselves, to become separated from themselves. And then kind of going back to what we talked about in the opening, or maybe Brandy, about you just, let's just think about heaven, that type of thing. Let's just be there, or a magic wand, Amelia, let's just keep it all happy. Of course, that's our yearning for all of us. I think one of the things that's very different about soul injury and part of the appeal, and Brandy, this is sort of what you were talking about the messy middle part of the arc, and that is that there's a term in the literature called artificial optimism. Viktor Frankl talks about artificial optimism. Others call it toxic positivity. So that, in other words, no matter what problem you have, we're going to put a positive spin on it. You just need to be more resilient. You just need to keep a positive attitude. And I'm not saying that those things aren't important. Don't get me wrong at all. But when we tell people, you just have to be the best version of yourself, well, yeah, and you got to get real with the worst version of yourself also. It's all there. It's a full spectrum. And if you only look on one end of that spectrum, and you only desire to get real with that end, then, that's, in my mind, part of the trouble that we have in the world, because what we end up doing is suppressing those hostile parts. And that's, that's really part of the core of violence in our world, is that if you peel back those layers of violence, if you're going to find hurt, you are going to find unmourned loss and hurt. So we are looking in the wrong places to heal the hostility in our world. We need to be looking inside for hurt, because anger and violence pushes the hurt out. So at any rate, I digress a little bit, but you can see how it's all intertwined. And, it's sort of paradoxical that I learned these lessons about how to acquire inner peace from people who had been trained for war.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, if you really think about it, those warriors who came back and had to, as hard as they fought in war and the courage that takes, I'm going to tell you the aftermath of war takes even more courage, and coming to peace with that. And by the time people would come to the end of their lives and be in a bed with, as I'm sitting there at their bedside, and I would kind of interview them in a way, but my point was really just to bear witness to their suffering and to bear witness to the lessons they had learned. It's a tremendous, it's a unique perspective that I've been able to gain, I think, as any hospice professional would. But also for me, there's thousands of hospice professionals. There's thousands of PTSD and trauma experts, but there's only a handful of people who have really specialized in both. And I sort of feel like it's the confluence of both of those patient populations that has yielded this rather unique lesson about soul injury. And if you think about it, if most people have acquired in one way or another a soul injury and having scattered pieces of self and not being fully connected to all those pieces, you would think we'd have a name for it, a word for it, so we can have a conversation like you and I are having right now. Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy that we have not yet had a term that identifies something that we can all then know what it means. Soul injury. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means you get kind of lost and separated disconnected from your own sense of self. You're kind of missing in action in your own life. Got squeezed out of your own life for one way or the other. Well, how did that happen? Well, unmourned loss and hurt, or unforgiven guilt and shame, or fear of helplessness and loss of control. Okay, let's talk about. You see how then all that unconscious stuff that gets stuffed behind a wall and stifles us and comes out unconsciously as anger or violence or just shutting down and withdrawal. It can go either way. It is released so we can have meaningful conversations. I can tell you on people's deathbeds, you have meaningful conversations.
We don't got time for meaningless time stuff. I feel like
exactly.
It's such a important thing that you just said that I want to highlight about like having a word for it, because I feel like in our society we've talked a lot in the past 10 years or so to come a long ways in like understanding and recognizing that mental health is physical health and that we should be considering that as part of what we do. But it feels to me like the way you initiate maybe going to see therapy is because I'm struggling, and you identify a struggle, or you get diagnosed with depression or something, right? And like, sure, that's definitely an entry point. That could be, but it seems more applicable that you recognize that you have a soul injury, because those are the root causes of most of the problems that we go to therapy to talk to somebody about. And then now that I know that, and I can say that, I know that, well, my next step is going to be this, right? Like, instead of it being so, I don't know, ethereal or wishy-washy, or feels like, if you're not in touch with it, or you are very in touch with your feelings, but need somebody to talk about it, then you go to therapy. No, it's really kind of the other way around. It should be in that, you're not actually in touch with your feelings as well as you should be, or haven't explored it, or got unmourned loss, and now I want to try to deal with that. Tell me how you feel about what happens next after somebody has identified or recognizes, like, yeah, that is me.
Yeah.
Care Lab listeners, it's Brandy, and as the founder of a platform made to make aging in place easier for everyone, I knew it would be incomplete if we did not have education, especially for caregivers. So whether you're a family caregiver or somebody who trains a whole organization, Higher Standards caregiver training videos are for you. I'm so proud that we were able to partner together with Amelia in order to provide these to you, because they're easy for everybody. You get great occupational therapist-led training on topics like transfers and how to care for someone as they age, or maybe as things change when you have Parkinson's. So no matter if you're the loved one who doesn't know exactly what to do next because things are getting different, or if you're a professional who trains caregivers that go into the community and you need some quality education, you get both from Higher Standards Caregiver Training. And you need to check them out at higherstandardscaregivertraining.com.
Well, one thing before I do that, I think one of the things you're saying that's important about mental illness, quote unquote, mental illness is, we don't consider.
Can I just say I love that, because like mental, it's all one and the same. It's all part of us. Like, why do we separate these things out? Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Well, the other thing is, I'm careful. I don't want to pathologize soul injury. Okay, now we've made soul injury a into that category of mental illness and put it in the DSM. No, it just is. It's part of the human condition, and so talking about it like that is very, very helpful. Anyway, and your question, Brandy, was about, okay, so now I realize I have a soul injury. Well, first of all, one of the first things I would do, we've had scientists research the soul injury concept and the tools that we use, so it's all validated. That's all published in refereed journals. So the first thing, one of the things we have is an inventory. So it's just 8 questions that you ask yourself, and all 8 questions really have to do with those 3 causes. So, it's right on our website. It's very easy to take, 5 minutes. And so that is I think kind of the first step is to kind of do a self-awareness, like, okay, I'm kind of stuck here. Oh yeah, I kind of have this hole here that's kind of deadened. What's that about? What could be causing that? Well, when you take the inventory, you can see if it slots into 1, 2, or all 3 of those causes. And then, I think the beautiful thing really underlying anything is going to be a loss of some kind. So again, it's learning. There's a famous saying that says, those who grieve well, heal well. And when we're talking about grief and loss, that can be, we typically think about, oh yeah, when someone dies, that's loss. Well, sure. Well, that's the obvious, but every day, anytime you're disappointed, think about a disappointment. Why is it disappointing? Because you suffered a loss of some kind. Now, on a scale of 0 to 100, it may only be a 1, but it's still a loss. And if you can grieve, the quicker you can recognize that as a loss, consciously grieve it, the quicker you can release it and move back into the present moment without resentment, without getting to the end of the day and going, well, I didn't get the stuff done. I had all these interruptions. I had all these, it took me away from, that kind of baggage really is unmourned loss. We just don't call it that. We don't recognize it. So the very first thing is to be able to name it, recognize it, grieve it, so that it can then be released. Now, obviously, bigger losses, loss of a job, loss of, a good friend, betrayal, those kinds of losses would require more than just a mere disappointment, obviously. One of the things I always cover, too, is being able to kind of ceremonies are wonderful ways that access the unconscious so that something can be released. So for big losses, there is that as well. So to answer your question, it really kind of depends on the context and what have you. In my book, it is filled with self-awareness exercises. I'll give a concept and then a story and then a box that has a self-awareness exercise. So, that basically asks you to look inside. Is it there? You don't have to share it with anybody, just, self-awareness, and then what to do about it.
And is your book, I know, well, you've written 3 books. Where are they all available right now? And like, what are their titles? Because I'm sure after folks have listened to you speaking, there's obviously huge value in reading, your written works as well. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Sure. The first book is called Peace at Last, subtitle Stories of Hope and Healing for Veterans and Their Family. So it is very veteran-centric. So anybody who is a veteran, anybody who loves a veteran, anybody who takes care of veterans, hopefully would be interested in that. It definitely offers a different perspective because the perspective is from dying veterans. So even veterans Amelia, even like your husband, is not within a community of dying veterans.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to tell you that your perspective shifts very dramatically when people are given a terminal diagnosis. They suddenly wake up to how their life matters. The day before you're given a terminal diagnosis, you pretty much take your life for granted. The day after you're given a diagnosis, everything changes. So, and that was the perspective that I was able to glean. So anyway, that's Peace at Last. The second book is called The Hero Within, Redeeming the Destiny We Were Born to Fulfill. So that is more about how to do that, it's really what I call a self-compassioning process. And the Hero Within describes that self-compassioning process, which I divide into abiding, reckoning, and beholding. That's another story. The third book is called Soul Injury, Healing the Relationship You Have with Yourself. That book is coming out in just about 3 weeks. It will be, it's at the printer right now, being printed. So we should have those shipped and ready to go within just a couple of weeks. So it really outlines much of what we were talking about today. I mean, ultimately, it is about healing the relationship you have with yourself. And as I said, your real self is not only the best version of yourself. It is the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful. It is all of it. And the tools for how to do that. And I've got a workbook and available, again, to help people really work through that. And really, my ultimate hope, what we really see that's so powerful, is to be able to do it with someone else. So to do it in a group, to do it as a book community, because that kind of shared vulnerability is really inspiring. You hear each other's stories, and it can, that's how we learn and grow. Stories are powerful. I mean, they really are. So,
And I want to, so I have two more little questions. First is, but first I want to say, actually, probably by the time, so listeners, you probably know that we pre-record here at Care Lab. So probably by the time you're listening to this, I'm going to guess that Deborah's book will actually that Soul Injury will already be out and available. So where can people actually go to purchase your books? And then my follow-up question, kind of wrap things up here, is if you had one step that people who, as they're listening to this, are thinking, oh my gosh, that's me. Like, I have a soul injury. What is one step that those people can take?
Okay. So the first question is, where can you get the books? So they are on our website, which is either soulinjury.org, O-R-G, or Opus, O-P-U-S, Peace, P-E-A-C-E. That's the name of our nonprofit organization. So you can get it opuspeace.org or soulinjury.org. They both go to the same place. And you will find not only books, but I do have online courses. All of this is we have online courses that you can take, and those are great to do either privately or as a group, or companies use it with their employees too. So all of that is available. So your second question is, if there was one thing. Well, I will tell you, hopefully I've given you today some concepts for your head and information for your head. That's important for you to say, maybe I have a soul injury. That's about all we can truly accomplish today. In the books, I tell lots of stories that will truly touch your heart, because I tell the messy in between, navigating the problems, the issues stories. So hopefully that will touch your heart. And that's important. But the real thing is to be able to move it from the head to the heart down to the gut, to this dwelling place that I call, that is the seat of the soul, really, if you think about it. So if there's one thing that I would encourage people to do, is to just start considering getting real with themselves. What's really going on? So I'm going to ask everybody right now, all your listeners as well, we're going to do what I call, this is a tool that we call at Opus Peace, we call it Anchor Your Heart. So I want you just to place one or both hands, whatever feels comfortable, on your heart, and either lower your eyes, or if you can close them completely, that's fine too, whatever feels most comfortable. And I want you just to take a deep breath. That was step one. Now, without moving, keep your eyes closed, your hands where they are, and just become aware. Step two is just become aware of what's you're really feeling, what's going on there. What do you find there? What are you feeling? Or try not to feel. Either way, just being aware. Good. All right. Now, step three, without changing anything, just be aware of this place inside you that is strong and capable of holding whatever it is you're feeling. Good, bad, ugly, beautiful, all there. There's a place inside you that holds it for you, whether you know it or not. It's still there. So just take a moment to acknowledge this brave space inside you that is able and capable of holding your pain for you, is able and capable of holding your joy for you. It's all there. Everything you need in order to be whole is already there. Already there. Now take one more deep breath. Bring that brave space with you as you come back and prepare to go on about your day.
That was lovely.
Very simple. It's just 3 steps. You can do it. No one even really needs to know you're doing it. You could be sitting at a meeting all panicked out and sit there and do this. Nobody's going to think anything about it. You can do it with your eyes open. Costs no money. Takes no extra time. It's really something. I can tell you we used it extensively with our dying patients. Dying's not easy. It's not easy to take that final leap. There's a lot of trepidation, and being able to teach patients how to ground themselves. It's a simple grounding technique that helps you get in touch with your beingness, not just your humanness, but your beingness, and being able to unite those into one complete whole. We are all both wounded and whole. We're both.
Deborah, I appreciate you.
Well, I was going to say, it just dawned on me how the very first line of the book that's coming out next week, the very first line of the first page of the first paragraph is, everything that I've learned that's really mattered, I learned from the dying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, Deborah, thank you so, so much for being on this episode of Care Lab. We would love to have you back again if you would ever like to return. Absolutely wonderful words of wisdom. I know that our listeners are deeply appreciative of everything that you've shared with us today. Listener, if you made it to the end, and I hope you did, and I hope that if you were driving while Deborah was giving that last lesson, that you pulled over safely.
Or kept your eyes open.
You can, honestly, you can still do it at a stoplight with your eyes open.
I hope you kept your eyes open. If you didn't, I hope you pulled over. And if you were driving, you didn't have a chance to do it, then take a moment to go download the episode, go back and re-listen to this later and do that exercise. It's absolutely worth doing. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Care Lab. Sure. Make sure that you like, subscribe, please leave a comment, and we'll see you right back here next time on Care Lab. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.